And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. We are coming to you live from the two scenes of the crime. George was at the war room at the Colts facility earlier today as the Colts did make their selection of Anthony Richardson. I am here in Kansas City on site as well. And George, the Colts have made finally the decision at quarterback. It will be Anthony Richardson at number 4. So I want to start the pod off by asking you this simple question. Are you more surprised that we both got our prediction correct? In last week's pod, we predicted that the Colts at number 4 will stay there and draft Anthony Richardson. Are you more surprised that we're both right? If you listened to the pod earlier in the year, you know all our game picks are wrong. So that's a big accomplishment for us. Or are you more surprised that the Colts drafted the last quarterback taken on Thursday night?
Well, I mean, my daughter picked the Richardson too, so
That's
I
true.
think her mojo is leading on to us there, and so my wife texted me as soon as the pick got made, and she's like, "I'm taking Lily to Vegas," and I was like, "Yeah, at this point, UConn and Anthony Richardson back to back like that,
She's on
so
fire.
she's on fire. Maybe we need to start monetizing this, right? That's the way this goes.
Insider
So
picks.
right, exactly. At this point, I think she needs to come on and make our picks for the season next year. She can pick the games week by week, but see, it's not like she's gonna do worse than we did a year ago.
We set the
But
bar very low.
as big an upset as it is that we were both agreed and we were right, I'm legitimately more surprised the Colts took the last quarterback. I thought not only would Levis go at some point in the first round, I thought there was a chance Hendon Hooker would go too.
You're a boy.
So from 3 on or from 4 on, there being no quarterback. It's not shocking because we said all along we didn't know what was going to happen in this draft, and every year there's one quarterback that tends to fall further than you expect. But to me, I'm more stunned by that than I am, and that's not to take away from how stunning it is that we were right.
Right. I mean, right. Do not bury the lead. We were right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod over a week out. Called that one for sure. And when you take everything, the situation into consideration, where Bryce Young was unfortunately out of the running after the Panthers traded up to number 1, and that dream of getting, I think, what is, the guy who's, I think, the surest thing in this draft, you lose out on him. Then the thought and the, attention goes to, okay, you have Stroud, you have Richardson, you have Levis. How's the board going to fall? And I'll be honest, I was very late to this parade, this train of Anthony Richardson, even over CJ Stroud, just because he's such a massive question mark. He's such a guy that could work out, could be a top 5 guy, but also there's a likely chance with all the question marks and all the concerns and flaws in his game and the very little experience he has that it will not work out and he will be like a long line of busts in the first round. But what got me kind of within the last week and a half, all in on Richardson as being the Colts pick is the fact that when you're picking number 4, I think it's one of two things that you're going, you have a goal for. Number 1 is to get the quarterback that makes sure you're never picking number 4 again, right? But also number 2 is when you're picking the top 5 and you're picking a quarterback, you want to get a guy that you think can one day be an elite guy, can be one of the top 3, 5, 1 quarterbacks in the league. You want to get that home run guy that gives you a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl. And I feel like Richardson, if he puts it all together, is that guy, whereas CJ Stroud, I am concerned that he could be Jared Goff 2.0 and not really get to that high level that you need to get to in order to win a Super Bowl. So I love the fact that the Colts are taking a swing. And to Chris Ballard's credit, we questioned a lot of, his decision-making. We questioned his sometimes fortitude in making big swings. This is easily the biggest swing and the biggest risk he has taken at the most important position. And I'm glad he did it because if he's right and this pans out, I think the Colts are set for the next 15 years. And within that 15 years, at least a decade, you have a Super Bowl window open. And so I like the fact that you swing big. It could blow up in their face, but at least you took a chance on a guy that legitimately gives you, if everything works out, a chance to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. Massive swing here. We'll see how it turns out. I think it's one of those home run or strikeout situations that we were talking about. We'll see how it turns out. I don't have a lot of faith and Chris Ballard's evaluation at the position. I mean, we talked about that earlier. You said, do you trust him to get it right? I said, no. Do I trust that he's gotten it right? No, but I do see the upside here. I think everybody does. The ceiling here is unbelievably high. There's a chance, and we talked about this when we were talking about like best case scenario for all these guys. There's a chance that this guy 5 years from now is the best player in the NFL. That's how high his ceiling is.
Seriously.
So you just you get to see how it works out. This is a big bet on Shane Steichen and his ability to develop this kid. One of the things that Anthony said today after the pick was he was a big fan of Jalen Hurts. He liked watching the Eagles because of Hurts. And so he's really looking forward to working with Steichen. Shane said that he was being very careful not to make any comparisons between Richardson and any other quarterback. But he said that he feels like, inexperience is the big question mark with Richardson. And the only way that you fix that is to play. So I don't think they're going to hand over the starting job. I think he's going to have to earn it. They made that pretty clear. But I also don't think they're coming. I think there was a sense before the draft that maybe this would be a redshirt year. I don't think that they're thinking that way. They're not going either way. They're not handing him the job. They're not walking in thinking he won't play this year. They're going to let that play out and let that, kind of determine itself. And then we'll see. I think the really intriguing thing about this is Stroud lands in the division. So, on both sides for Houston and Indianapolis, I think it's going to be fascinating in the next few years because the Colts had a chance to go up to number 1 and, potentially get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, whichever way they wanted to go when they got there. And he chose not to do that. And the Texans, obviously picking number 2, had a chance to take Anthony Richardson, and they chose not to do that. They're going to see each other twice a year. To me, that's a fascinating part of this. Maybe they're both hits, maybe they're both misses, but it's going to be really intriguing to watch that play out head to head the way that it will. I can't really think of a recent situation quite like this where you had two guys go in the top 5. Both teams had a legitimate path to get either quarterback, had they chosen it. This is how it ends up. I just, to me, that's going to be really fascinating to watch how that plays out. And we'll see. I do like the swing on the upside. I think the way the board played out, the situation they were in, I mean, full well, I think they should have gone up to number 1. That hasn't changed. I said before the draft that I thought it would be a failure if they didn't come away with either Young or Stroud. They did not come away with Young or Stroud. So I'm not doing jumping jacks today. I'm not ready to, give them an A+ or anything like that. But I think given the situation that they found themselves in, I think they made the right decision when they were on the clock. And now we'll see. Now you just hope that Anthony Richardson said all the right things today. He said, look, I'm going to come in, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to bring energy, I'm going to be coachable, and I want to win a Super Bowl. So I think if he can put all those elements together that he's got physically, all the skill set that he's got, all the talent that he's got, it's going to be something really special. And I think, probably the biggest thing Shane Steichen said is we all know the running ability, and you would think that's what's going to come first. His first impact would be with his legs, but he said, don't discount the way he throws the ball. It comes out really pretty. So, we'll see. The completion percentage needs work, but I think there's people that say some small tweaks that could happen there that could really turn that around. So, big swing, and we'll see if they've knocked it out of the park or if, in a couple of years, they're going to be right back in the batter's box, trying again.
Now, there are a few caveats, and like you mentioned, number 1, we talked all offseason about getting to number 1 and controlling your destiny. They did not do that. So even though, again, you got, that was, like I said, a failure right then and there, and the decision wasn't exactly a difficult one at number 4, right? It was Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, and you were on the Richardson train in terms of, or not, I should say, not on the Levis train. So was I. We both were off of Will Levis, and so was every other team in the NFL, as he wasn't even drafted in round number 1. So it's not like he had an excruciating decision he had to make in terms of, oh, I hope I picked the right one, and you had 3 or 4 options there. It was basically you had your choice made for you in Anthony Richardson. We talked about that being a problem for the Colts in terms of allowing the draft board or allowing the rest of the league to draft for you instead of you going up and making your own decision. Is Anthony Richardson the pick in number 1 if the Colts had the first overall pick? I don't know. I would probably still say no. I still think it would be Bryce Young. But either way, Stroud was not available. Young was not available. And now the one thing I do like with the Richardson pick is that it does now allow Shane Steichen to do what he was brought in to do. All right, when he was hired and he went through that entire painstaking process of all the interviews and all the secrecy, he was hired because of his ability to develop a young quarterback. The Colts knew they were going to draft a quarterback, and they wanted a guy who was going to set them up to make sure that quarterback is as successful as possible. And you made the Jalen Hurts reference before. You have a guy whose physical tools show you he could be one of the best in the league if you put it all together. And even though it is a little bit of blind loyalty, I will admit that, the track record speaks for itself. So I will go on the track record of what Shane Steichen's been able to do in previous stops here and hope at least that he's able to do the same thing, have the same luck with Anthony Richardson. And in 3-4 years, it's going to work out. And that's something too, I think we got to remember. It's not going to be, obviously in 2023, you mentioned he wants to play week 1 and the Colts basically didn't shut that down. They said if he kind of earns it, he could play. It's not like one of those things where he's absolutely redshirting, and they said that from day number 1. He has a chance to play his way in the field. But just like Josh Allen in Buffalo, it took Josh Allen 3 years, really until 2020, when he actually put it all together and was a quarterback that was legitimately one of the best in the NFL. It's going to be the same thing with Richardson, maybe even longer, just because of, again, with all the questions and all the concerns about mechanics and accuracy and decision-making and all that stuff. So it's still going to be a patient process. 2023 is not going to be, I think, very fun for, in terms of what the offense is going to look like and in terms of wins and losses. But again, if you are at least able to get progress, I trust Shane Steichen to be that coach right now, to be able to give Anthony Richardson the best chance of success. And even if it fails, I like taking the risk. I like taking the risk, taking a chance that, or at least you look at the quarterback position is not, we can just play it safe, or we can just, plug and play. This is a guy who truly has the tools to be one of the best, and that's what we want.
Yeah, and there's no doubt it's a big bet on Shane Steichen. This is why you brought him in. This is why you hired him to be the head coach. You wanted to open up that field on the style of quarterbacks that you could bring in, and you gave him, the most moldable lump of clay in this draft. You gave him, somebody that he can really work with. And again, I think Richardson said, over and over again today that he's open to coaching and he's open to improving in the areas that he needs to improve. And if he's going to stay true to that, I think that's a really good start right there. If he really is going to come in with that mindset about just working his butt off and, listening to what the coaches are telling him and trying to, do all the right things, that's what leads to success. That's how Jalen Hurts became Jalen Hurts, just coming in and outworking everybody and getting the job done. But I think, to your other point, Chris Ballard said a couple times today, try to tap the brakes a little bit. He said Terry Bradshaw, he didn't think would have had a career in today's NFL because it took him too long to get into where he was Terry Bradshaw. I know you're talking about a guy that won 4 Super Bowls, during one of the biggest dynasties ever in the league with the Steelers in the 1970s. So, and the point there is, patience. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the fan base receives that. It's split right now, at least from what I've seen. And that's was expected. That was going to happen no matter who they picked. I think any of the 3 guys that were possibilities coming into today were going to get the same reaction. There was going to be, people for it and people against it. But, they've been asking for patience now for a while around here. I think what's different this time is you've got this young quarterback, you've got that ceiling. So there's a better chance of a payoff down the road. You're not talking about, hey, let's see if this 39-year-old can rediscover his glory days. You're not talking about Carson Wentz coming in and trying to, bounce back from the worst year that he had in his career at that point. You're talking about a rookie and I think it's a lot easier to sell patience in that. And I think, you know, in addition to the fascinating element of this with the division, I think it's going to be a fascinating training camp. I think Westfield's going to have national media pretty much the entire time out there because everyone's going to check in and see how it's coming along. You know, and I think this is one of the things you mentioned earlier, like, would they have taken Richardson at number 1? We'll never know. I mean, that's not something we'll know the answer to, but I can't dismiss it out of hand. And I think that's an interesting element of this as well. I can't sit here right now and say, no, they absolutely would have taken Bryce Young, even if they had traded up to number 1. They really like Anthony Richardson. And that's one thing Ballard made abundantly clear. Yeah, he tapped the brakes a little bit, but he also talked about this kid's character, how mature he is, how he's handled pressure and adversity at other points in his career. I think they feel like he's further along on the field than is commonly thought of, in large part because they feel like his pocket presence is really good. He feels the pressure. He doesn't necessarily need to see it. You know, he knows where it's coming from. He has that sort of innate ability that's really hard to teach in guys that don't have it. It's there for him. And I think, you know, the fact that he's only 20, he won't turn 21 until next month. All of that, you know, is their belief that this is a guy who it's all there for him. If he can just put it all together, the sky's the limit. And I think that's why patience this time around makes sense. It's a totally different ask than it has been before.
Right. And you can, again, as a fan, at least myself, I can buy into 2023 being brutal from a win-loss perspective, because like I said, now there's a real chance to see development and growth because you have that young quarterback that you're hoping can develop for the future, and you're not in this win right now mode and kind of just trying to put duct tape on the bumper as it's falling off, dragging on the road and say, oh, it's all good here, don't worry. They finally got a bumper fixed. We'll see if it actually stays up, but the duct tape is gone and they got, at least right now, a real solution. So let me just ask you quickly here. We'll get into a little bit of a round 2 and 3 preview, day number 2 preview here in a little bit, and just talk about some quick Colts needs. But to just kind of put a wrap on Richardson, and now at least, George, we know what the Colts offense is going to look like, right? Because Shane Steichen has said ad nauseum this offseason, the offense is going to be dictated by the quarterback and the style of play. So we know the style of play is similar to Jalen Hurts, where he's a dual threat quarterback. You look at this Colts offense, you have Jonathan Taylor, which that's going to be next year. You talk about a lot of fun to watch. 2 behemoths in the backfield with Richardson and Jonathan Taylor maybe running the zone read. That's going to be, holy smokes. Wouldn't want to be a defensive end on that offense or that defensive line, that's for sure.
Especially not if Quentin Nelson gets out in front of them.
Speaking of which, you have an athletic offensive line led by Quentin Nelson. You have Braden Smith. You have your deep threat in Alec Pierce. You have your possession receiver who gets the tough catches in Michael Pittman Jr. How do you think right now Richardson fits into this offense, at least in the immediate future here with the Colts?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think you go and watch Philadelphia and you can kind of see some of that. I still think the Colts need, as we talked about, you know, a lot during the offseason, they need some more shifty guys that they can get out in space, who can make plays. I think that's one thing that really took that Philadelphia offense and put it over the top. I don't think there's a lot of those guys here, you know, those Nyheim Hines type of players that you can just kind of get them the ball and let them create. But there's time to add them, you know, here in this draft. So we'll see how the next couple of days go in that regard. But yeah, I think the blueprint here is pretty obvious. You know, I think you're going to probably lean more on the run game early and let Richardson create that way. They've talked about wanting to take deep shots, that's going to be a big element of this offense. That's something that he did pretty well at Florida. You know, we talk about the accuracy and things. It's ironic. He's been probably less accurate on the shorter timing pattern throws than he has been on the deep throws. His deep ball looks pretty good most of the time. We know he's got plenty of arm. He's had pretty good ball placement with that. So I think that element, I mean, you go back and watch the Super Bowl and Jalen Hurts is running over people and they're taking deep shots, feels like every other snap. And, you know, just such an explosive offense there in Philly. Aside from those kind of shifty guys out in space, I think most of those other pieces are here. Now the question is, it's unfair to think that Richardson's going to be next year at the spot that Jalen Hurts was in during that Super Bowl. But I
Right.
think that's where you're heading. That's where you're trying to get. And you'd want to see flashes of that. A game here and there, a series here and there where it looks like that, I think would be a really big step next year.
I think a position too that now that we finally have an idea of what the identity is going to look like, I think, and again, this is maybe an area you address more next off season, because it may be a little too late now in terms of getting an established veteran. But now you look at I think a position that's going to be of utmost importance going forward is going to be tight end. Because you go back to at least what the Eagles did last year. Obviously, they made a big trade for A.J. Brown, but you have Dallas Goedert there, who is a tremendous dual threat tight end where he blocked really well and also was a huge threat in the passing game. And that was a guy that Jalen Hurts relied on a ton. The only thing with the Colts right now is they don't have one of those guys that can do both. You either have tight ends that are really elite at blocking and struggle pass catching, or really good route runners that still struggle with blocking. Jelani Woods is still a guy that's growing and improving. And hopefully he can become that guy. He's a massive frame, massive target for Richardson, which is going to be good, especially with his, like you mentioned, short yardage accuracy issues. It's going to be very tough, I'll say this, to overthrow Jelani Woods. That is for sure. So that could work in Richardson's favor for sure. But I think it's going to be definitely now a position that you're going to kind of look at for the Colts here moving forward in the next few years. I think it's of one of big importance of trying to kind of get that established and maybe getting, whether it's via trade or in the draft or even just development on your own roster, getting someone that can be truly a reliable guy for this offense is going to be a big focal point moving forward.
There is one thing I think you can guarantee that's going to get carried over from Philly.
Let's hear it.
That rugby push. You're going to see that 100% now. I think you're going to know what's going to happen on 3rd and 1 this year.
Yeah, you put Jonathan Taylor, maybe Kylan Granson as well as the two like wing backs that are like the pushers. Yeah, I think the Colts will do very well in getting those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. The call is going to be very simple. Everyone is going to know what it is, and there's going to be no stopping it whatsoever. You're right about that.
And that's one thing I can say with utmost confidence. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I think I'm coming out probably negative right now. But like I said before, I'm a realist. I'd like to see a little more production. The traits are off the charts. There's no question about that. The potential here is as high as it can be. Like I said, he could be in 5 years the best player in the NFL. That's how high the potential is. But the production wasn't there yet. We'll see. I'm very open to the idea that this will work. I want to point that out. But the one thing I'm absolutely certain about, those tough yards, you watch that Florida tape, it doesn't take long at all to see defenders bouncing off of him, teams needing 3, 4, 5 guys to get him down. I think that rugby push is going to be large and in charge here in Indy. And I think the red zone in general will look interesting because of his threat to run. And then you've got him and Taylor and Jelani Woods. And theoretically, you're going to get Drew Ogletree in there. He looked really good last year in the preseason when he went down. And then you've got big receivers in Pierce and Pittman. They're going to cause some problems for teams, I think, inside the 20.
That's a really good point. Let's finish out the Richardson talk by asking this, George. How would you characterize this day? Like, how do you think Colts fans should be feeling? Because I'll answer it this way, and I'll say this. I am optimistic. Again, with everything being said, all the criticisms, the reason why I'm optimistic today is because for me, I view Anthony Richardson as a lottery ticket. Right? I'm going to equate at least quarterbacks to, we'll say, gambling. Because there's one of two ways you can win the lotto, right? It's either buying like a Powerball ticket or getting the scratch-offs. And the scratch-offs is more likely to win. You buy the $10 ticket, you feel pretty good that you're going to get some sort of change back. Maybe not the big $2,000 winner, but you are more likely to win a scratch-off ticket than you are on like a Powerball ticket. So you can play it safe with a scratch-off. Say, I hope I win $3-4, but it's nothing life-changing wise. Where you buy a Powerball ticket, you're probably not going to win. But if you win big. And the Colts today bought a lottery ticket. And they bought a lottery ticket that could get them in the same breath as the Chiefs, as the Bengals, as the Eagles, as legitimate teams with elite quarterbacks that give you a Super Bowl window every single year. And so the odds of this hitting, again, I think are slim. So it's not, I'm definitely not saying, you're not saying, I don't think most fans are thinking this is a guarantee he's going to pan out and they just got to steal the draft. I still think it's more unlikely than likely that he does pan out and is even just a playoff caliber quarterback every single year compared to like an elite Super Bowl caliber quarterback. But I like that at least you got a ticket to the dance. I like that at least I have a reason to hope that there's a chance that this could be one of the best guys in the NFL compared to playing it safe with a guy like Will Levis or CJ Stroud, or if they get a more of a scratch-off ticket where you feel better about their short-term success. But I think there's legitimate questions of if they can put it all together to get to that elite level. I think Richardson had, to me, no doubt he can reach that elite level in terms of what he can do physically. It's just more the question of can he put it all together. So it's more likely than not it doesn't work. But I like the fact that at least the Colts are taking a swing and getting themselves in the dance instead of saying, oh, we're going to get a so-so quarterback and we're going to build this great team around him like they've tried to do really every year since Andrew Luck retired, I should say, and they failed at doing so outside of Phillip Rivers' 2020 season. So I like the fact that they're kind of, in one sense, deviating from what they've done in the past and now taking a real legitimate swing at trying to get into that upper, as Jim Irsay would say, that upper quartile of the upper quartile.
There's no doubt. I mean, this is a $6 billion jackpot that they're entering. I mean, this isn't just the Powerball. It's one of those record-breaking Powerball tickets.
It's on the national news every day.
Right. You know, this is the jackpot here. And I think when you look around the AFC right now, that's the route to go. I mean, we talked about that on the draft preview show. You look even in the division right now with Trevor Lawrence and the path that he's on, you know, go get that A+ guy. And there's no doubt that is the ceiling for Anthony Richardson. And I think, again, I he's coming in with the right attitude. I think he's got the right coach here to help that along. So we'll see. You know, I'm honestly about 50-50 on it. And that's why I said earlier, I think I sound like I'm negative, because you got to acknowledge the drawbacks here. If this was a slam dunk, he's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, and not even that. He's going to be the first Anthony Richardson. I think that's the thing. I don't think there's a comp. I don't think there's nobody you can really look at and say, you know, this is what he's going to be like. I've never seen anybody his size run the way he does, do backflips, you know, after he throws the ball 80 yards. That's something completely new. And I think it's 50-50. I really do. I think you're putting a lot this year on a first year head coach and on a rookie quarterback, but sometimes taking those lumps pay off down the road, you know? So I think we'll see where it turns. I feel like you've got a situation right now where you got a lump of coal that could become a diamond, and we'll see how that turns out. But I'm with you. And the other thing, I think this weekend in general is the one weekend out of the year where everybody in the NFL should be dreaming. It's the time for optimism. It's what it's about, you know? And I think that's the best part of this pick is for the first time in a long time at the quarterback position, it gives you that opportunity to dream. Are you going to get there? That's a question to be answered another day, but that dream now is possible. It's something you can join in on. And again, this is the weekend to do that. And congratulations, Anthony Richardson. You're the number 4 pick in the NFL draft. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. And like I said, if he hits, he's going to be something we have never before seen in this league.
It's weird to say this is a good day for the Colts when I just said before, I think it's more likely it doesn't work out than it does. And you just described Richardson or compared him to a lump of coal. But I do think overall this is a good day for the Colts. I think you should feel good about the pick. Would you say, George, even though you're down at it, it's a good day, or are you still skeptical and still maybe, just not buying in because they dropped the ball 2 months ago?
I mean, I'm skeptical by nature. That's just, and I think there's just been too much go on with this franchise the last 5-6 years for me to just jump right in and say, oh yeah, this is going to be the best possible outcome. But I think it's a good day for the franchise. Again, I think you've got a chance now, and does it pan out? Nobody knows that today. Carolina did what I wanted to see done, went up and got Bryce Young, and they're not any more guaranteed than the Colts are at this point. You don't know what it's going to lead to, but at least I think the Colts have a plan. I think that's the most important thing here.
Yes.
I think one thing that came through loud and clear from the presser with Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard is that this was intentional. Like we were talking about, yes, they let the board fall to them. And yes, again, the quarterback was chosen for them in some ways, but I think they had, we were talking earlier, is there tiers within what they were doing? Did they have a plan for whoever was there? They clearly do. They clearly know what they want to do. This was the guy they wanted. I believe that. I know that people always kind of, they say that all the time, but if you heard the passion that Ballard was speaking with, look, you saw him at the Jeff Saturday press conference. You know what it looks like when he's not really sold on what's going on. That was not the case today. I think he believed. Now, again, would they have taken him over Bryce Young? I don't know. That's not really the important question. The important question is this a guy they truly wanted, a guy they truly believe in? And the answer is yes. Was he number one on their board or 2 or 3? I don't know. But I do know that they genuinely think that this is a guy who can lead them where they want to go in the future. And like you said, they said it themselves. There's still a lot of work to be done, both in terms of the rest of the roster and in terms of what you've got to do with him. But at least, to me, the big reason it's a good day is what I said before. At least now you can look at this guy and you can look at his ceiling. And you can legitimately dream of what he might become.
You know what's refreshing, George, and a change from the past? Chris Ballard showing some conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he was he's claimed in his pre-draft press conference, he doesn't lie, right? He either answers you honestly or he dodges questions. So, and I do believe that for the most part, you go back to his press conferences, that is generally true. He really does not lie. He is someone who is a straight shooter. And to hear conviction, to hear him talk about the way, like you said, he's selling that he knew Richardson was the guy from a month ago. And I believe we talked to him. Sorry, it's late at night. He was recording this after the first round. So I don't recall if you said this before we're talking and recording or if you said it during the podcast. But you said that, Ballard called Richardson last night on Wednesday night before the draft and said, hey, if you're there at 4, we're taking you. So there's clearly conviction at the quarterback spot for the first time, really since Andrew Luck retired. If you think about it, you had no other choice with Jacoby Brissett, timing-wise. Rivers, I would say, it's just perception. I don't think Ballard was all in, let's say, on the Rivers playing, especially when you kind of see the timing-wise how it worked out. Mm-hmm. Carson Wentz, he had to be talked into. Matt Ryan, he was skeptical about. This seems like the first time at quarterback specifically, he feels a real sense of conviction for the first time in a long time. Now, quarterback decisions have not gone well, so it's not like he's, this guy who, when he likes somebody, he's all in. But it's at least nice for someone who has been way more passive than I think he should have been when it comes to addressing this position for real going forward. It is at least refreshing on day one to hear some conviction from the guy making the decision.
Absolutely. And I think that's the word here. That's the word we kept using on the way, into the draft was they need to have conviction, and they did. And he said, in addition to saying that they had looked into trading up and decided to stay put and see how it worked out, he also said that there were contingency plans. They were prepared to draft somebody who wasn't a quarterback. They were prepared to trade down. They were prepared to there were plan Bs. So this was still plan A. There was a level of conviction. And again, is he the number one guy on their board? Maybe, maybe not. The really important thing is, do they believe in him? Did they have that conviction? And absolutely, the answer is yes.
You are right about that. So I think it's a good day for the Colts and Anthony Richardson now coming to Indy. It was also a good day, too, and you see how the rest of the board shook out, George, because the Colts, as we get kind of set and turn our eyes to day 2, Colts have 2 picks, 35 and 79. And now you look at, there are, some players that we thought would be surefire first-round picks that the Colts have a real shot here with the 4th pick of the 2nd round to get a legitimate guy that is a first-round talent kind of right in their lap. So you get a real chance here to get some talent. And then for me, I don't know if he'll even be there at 35. This could be a guy that's the first pick of the 2nd round. But if he's there, I think to me, it would be a home run pick and a guy you should go for. And that's Joey Porter Jr. Not saying I'm a Penn State alum and that's my guy, but I think he is a tremendous lockdown corner. I think that's a guy that brings physicality to the position. He has really good ball skills. He's a guy who can be on an island. Played a ton of man coverage at Penn State. So that's a little different scheme-wise from what Gus Bradley runs, but I think it would be something where it would fit in right away and kind of bring, I think, a surer thing to this Colts defensive back room that right now is filled with a lot of question marks and unproven guys. I think, to me, that's one of the guys that I look at that we thought would go in the first round, ended up not going in the first round. I think the Colts could really, really benefit from his drop if he could reach pick 35.
Yeah, not just in the first round, top half of the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, it was somewhere like, 14, 15, 16 is where I was seeing him go. Also, no small thing here. He does have a history of causing problems for CJ Stroud. And with him being in the division, it might be something you want to look into. But I think this pick was one that was important to the Colts. I think it's part of the reason they didn't want to move up. They didn't want to have to give this pick away, either to Carolina or Chicago or Arizona. If you look at Chris Ballard's time here, I mean, we were just talking about quarterback stuff has not looked good, but I think there's something, I think it's the context you put on that's important too. That, yeah, these quarterback picks have not looked good. The two quarterbacks he's drafted were the 4th and 6th round. So just throw that away. Those are even more lottery tickets. Those are scratch off tickets that you're just going to see if you can get a new free ticket out of, you know what I mean?
Right.
And the other guys, the starters, were not solely his. We don't know how sold he was on any of those guys. Clearly, Rivers and Wentz were more Frank Reich guys than they were Chris Ballard guys. And I think last year, Matt Ryan really was just, they were playing musical chairs and he was the last guy standing, so they grabbed him. It wasn't really anything more convicted than that. So I think that, that's important to go. But I think if you look at him historically, he's done some really good work at this point of the draft, whether it's Braden Smith, whether it's Shaquille Leonard, whether it's Michael Pittman Jr. They've gotten some really
Jonathan
good
Taylor
right around this
second-round
pick. Rocky Sin even had some good moments here and was picked around this spot. So I think corner is a huge need. So I think that's one that you're going to look at. And I think there's a couple corners out there. You mentioned Joey Porter Jr. I think Juju Brents from Kansas State, who's a local kid, went to Warren Central in Indianapolis, has the size, the athleticism, the physicality that you always see from those Seattle corners, which to me are Gus Bradley corners. So I think that's something that's in play. And the other, one guy that I really would not discount is Osiris Torrance, who was guard at Florida. One of the things that Ballard talked about, they spent a lot of time in Gainesville, which anybody who was paying attention to Jim Irsay's Jet already knew that they spent a lot of time in Gainesville this offseason. And yeah, they were there to Richardson, but you got to figure that they had their time with Osiris Torrance as well. He's a guy that was thought of as a more polished prospect in a lot of ways than even Richardson was. He was surefire first round pick, which you see how that turned out, because now he's still here in the second round. But it's obviously a position of need. I think he'd be a plug and play guy at right guard. Do you want to do that at 35? I think it depends on, I wouldn't take him over Brents or Porter, but I think he starts getting into the conversation as you move further down that list. A couple other guys that pop off to me right away. Another local-ish guy, and that he went to Notre Dame, Isaiah Foskey. He has a school record for sacks there, has the athleticism to maybe play that Leo spot with Yannick Ngakoue gone. That's a hugely important role. I think it's another spot you could see them fill. And then Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver from Mississippi. I think that's an interesting, give a weapon to Anthony Richardson, right? That's what you do with your rookie quarterback a lot. I don't think that would be a terrible move. Ole Miss has really been churning out good receivers lately. Maybe Mingo's next in that line. And then, one more just for good measure, Cody Mock, who is a highly athletic, freakish, sort of the offensive line version of Richardson in that way, offensive tackle from North Dakota State, who might not start right away, but maybe he's a guy that can come in and compete with Bernard Raymond. And much like we were talking about last year with Raymond, if he doesn't win that job, maybe he can slide in at right guard and fill the need there. So I think they're going to have plenty of options at 35.
Is Mock the lumberjack looking fella?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, you talk about intimidation. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an idiot, George. And a lot of people have said that about me. So it's probably the case. But I do think intimidation, like how you walk onto the field, how you look, does impact the game. That would be one for the Colts. There you have Cody Mock walking out, no helmet on, with the beard, the hair flowing. He a good look. I like that.
And I just think, there's all those are positions of need to one degree or another. If I had to bet, I would lean more towards corner or
Yes.
defensive end, because I think those are the two biggest needs. You're trying to replace Stephon Gilmore and Yannick Ngakoue. So, I think those are the two probably biggest needs, with corner being the biggest. Because I think if you had to go into the year with Odangbo and Pay and Lewis, you could do it. That corner spot right now, really, you've got Kenny Moore and you've got Isaiah Rodgers, neither of whom is really the perfect mold for Gus Bradley defense. And then the number 3 cornerback right now, as we speak, is Dallas Flowers. So you probably want to upgrade there. Nothing against Dallas Flowers, but you probably want to upgrade there. And I think there's opportunities to do that. I think Brent's would be a home run hit. Porter would absolutely be grand slam hit. But I feel like Brent's is a guy, he just fits a lot of what the Colts want. He started out at Iowa, and I think that's, defensive players from Iowa, generally a pretty good idea to go in that direction.
Absolutely. I'd agree with you there, but at least for pick 35, I like your priority. I think it should be corner. Number 1, first and foremost. And I think that's, look at 2 positions, in like the draft, positions of need and kind of the depth too. I think corner is one of those ones where you do see a bigger fall off the deeper you go, where we have seen now historically, at least recently, wide receiver, I think you can still get good value in the 3rd and 4th round and get legitimate contributors. Where I look at corner, I would still say like that's one where if you can use that 35, especially if you have a guy like Joey Porter Jr. there, I think that would do the Colts a lot of good and really shore up a need, and you feel good about the talent in thrown into that position compared to others. But in terms of the 2 biggest positions of need, I think you hit the nail on the head. Corner and defensive end. I think those are the 2, especially with the 2 picks they have on day number 2, one in the 2nd round, one in the 3rd round. I think that should be the 2 you try to address the most. And I as an offensive guy myself, I always would love and always kind of talk about receiver and get your brand new young quarterback a new weapon. But I do think that's a position where you can go in the 4th and 5th round and get a legitimate contributor. Offensive line, again, I'm with you there. It seems like now with the offseason moves we have seen, it's going to be Ryman getting the crack at left tackle to get the job. So now we're talking about more either a starting guard or swing tackle or, a 6th offensive lineman. So again, I would not prioritize that unless someone just falls like a rock and you're sitting there and go, this is great value. I would say at least for day 2, the 2 priorities of positions of need should be corner and defensive end.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. Torrance, I do think gets in that conversation just because he was really well thought of. I'm not sure, why he's still on the board. Maybe it's just a simple situation of people not wanting to take a guard in the 1st round. Looking at other positions and prioritizing other things. But I think if the corners are gone, the defensive ends are gone, that's probably where I would look is Torrance next. But it'd be interesting. The other dark horse may be out there, but I think it's more of round 3 is Payne Durham, the tight end from Purdue. There are people out there who think that he could be the next Jack Doyle in terms of what he does, being a blocker who could, like you were talking about, that guy who can stay on the field, be that 2-way guy. I don't know if I do that at 35, but maybe if there's still enough corners out there that you like, because we just mentioned 2, but it's still a lot of talent at that position on the board right now. If there's enough corners that you like, maybe you trade back from 35 and add 2 guys, maybe get a defensive end and a corner here in the 2nd round.
Let me ask you this, because I think positions are I'll be honest, I'm very torn when it comes to what the best draft philosophy is. Best player available, you just take the guy with the best talent right there and just you figure it out later, or you draft by position of need. And I think it depends on the team and the players and obviously how the board shakes out. But if you're the Colts, for example, let's say, and you get a guy like we talked about now, Joey Porter Jr. fits this because he's a corner, position of need, and he's a really high talent. But what about a guy like Michael Mayer? Like if you're Chris Ballard and you see a guy that we all thought was going to, okay, for sure, 1st round pick, 1st tight end taken. There was only 1 tight end taken, and it was pushed way down the board in Dalton Kincaid, so tight end was not a popular position. But you have what is, I will say, well regarded as a first-round talent and Michael Mayer. If you're Chris Ballard, how do you weigh just, hey, this is a guy that we thought no chance, and even though it's not really a position of need, we have a lot of, we have a lot of guys there ready. How do you balance positions of need and addressing those versus this guy is just a complete player? We should get him even if it's not a position right now that we're desperate to fill.
He's talked about that before, and he will always lean towards the best player. And I think because he doesn't want to miss on a great player. That's what he's always talked about. Don't reach somewhere for need when you've got, a potential star out there, waiting for you. Just go and grab that player. I think Mayer could fit that mold. I think a lot of people thought he was going to end up in Cincinnati. Would have been a really good fit. He's a Cincinnati guy. That's where he came from. I think it would have been a really interesting move there. Yeah, I don't think if they drafted him, there'd be a lot of cries out there of, hey, what are you doing? Tight end's not that big of a need. But I think in that situation, you add the best players you can and you figure it out from there. I do think there is enough talent at other needs. I don't think they're separate categories. I think the need breaks the tie. If you've got guys that are graded really close together, then you go with the need. And I think there's going to be enough corners, defensive ends. But I will note, he said, on Friday when we talked to him in the pre-draft presser, the tight end was the best he's ever seen. That this group he thought was maybe the best since he's been, doing this. So certainly he's looking at that position group, if not necessarily specific players within it.
And so you look at some of the best teams in the league. I'm here in Kansas City. Travis Kelce, obviously a huge component to that offense. Dallas Goedert, we saw in Philly, huge piece of that offense. You go to George Kittle in San Francisco, huge piece of their offense. You look at some of the best teams in the league, a lot of them do feature tight ends primarily. A lot of them feature tight ends that both block and catch the ball really well. And look, I understand it's college, so it's not like it's easily transferable and it's different skill set or it's different level of competition. But Michael Mayer's nickname at Notre Dame was Baby Gronk. And so I get it. It's a huge comparison to make. And I'm not saying he is going to be Gronk at the NFL level. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like if you get a guy like that, you saw how it was able to transform the Patriots team and kind of build that second run of their dynasty. It's one of those where, we're not talking about tight end right now as being a major need. There's a lot of bodies there. But it's one of those where if you're sitting there, there's a talent that's just like so remarkably great where you just say, we got to do it. I think if you're Chris Ballard, I think you do pull the trigger. I think you're right about that. When it comes to if it's equal or close, okay, you go with the position of need. But if it's like one of those where there is a disparity and maybe two corners you like go quickly off the board and there's a little bit of an early run on corners to start the second round, if you're Chris Ballard, I think a guy that, if you look at, compositions or compilations, I should say, that's the word I should be doing. It's very late, as you could tell, of mock drafts. Like this is a guy in Michael Mayer or player rankings that's like a top 20 player according to a lot of the trusted draft analysts out there. So if you can get a top 20 player in the second round, I think it's something that definitely Chris Ballard should consider for sure. And to your point, it's also Osiris from Florida too, their guard, kind of the same category as well.
Yep. And that is a need. That's a day one starter. So, I think you just plug and play him. I think Mayer would be that way too. So that I think the bottom line is they're going to have plenty of options here. I think 35 is going to be a really good value pick for them. And I think they're going to have a lot of ways they can go. I think they're going to have guys that are really talented that will fill needs. And they've got some guys that maybe have slipped through the cracks so far that maybe, don't necessarily fill a need like Mayer, but might be too good to pass up. And then that's what it comes down to is the grades. If there's somebody way above it, the two things I think that he's going to look at outside of need are that guy that's just screaming at you because he's so high up on the board. What is he still doing here? And the other one is the scarcity of talent at the position. Like you were talking about before, the one thing that might hurt Mayer in that situation is Ballard does think there's a really deep tight end class. So he might say, we'll go somewhere else because I think we can still get a good player at this spot. It's always interesting to watch how that plays out. I think both picks, potentially they could get two starters tomorrow. I mean, I think there's enough holes to be filled, and I think there's enough positions that are deep, that are need, like corner and defensive end, are both two of the deeper spots in offensive line. I mean, those three
Right.
are the ones I've heard probably the most, along with tight end, of being the deepest groups in this draft. Well, three of those four are big time needs for the Colts. So I think the expectation should be, honestly, that they come away with two starters tomorrow.
Which, like I said, to Chris Ballard's credit, he's had a tremendous track record in day 2 and day 3, finding those starters, finding those contributors, and really getting great value out of those later round picks. So day 2 will be a fun one, nice one to kind of get the Colts back on the board early there. Pick number 35, followed up by pick 79 as well in round number 3. So that'll do it for this first round edition, George, of the Blue Horseshoe Pod. It is 2:07 a.m. Eastern time. Holy cow. How are you functioning?
I'm hanging in there. But it's only day 1. So
That's true. Marathon's just starting.
do it
You
all
look
over again
down, you're running
tomorrow.
that mile 4, and you goes, oh boy, I'm tired already.
Now, the bad thing about this timing is I don't have time to ask Lily who they're going to take at 35. I'm not going to have the answer that I would otherwise get here.
You know what, George? I think this is what we got to learn. We got to quit while we're ahead. We're
That's a
1
good
for
point.
1. And I know your daughter's been on fire right now, so it's not us making a pick. It would be, just us stealing her information and just copying whatever she says. But also, I don't think we got to maybe be careful. Don't go to too often. We don't want to drain the water too quickly.
I think that's a really good point. You don't want to get all the luck out of the horseshoe right now. So let's quit while we're ahead. We nailed a pick. We're undefeated in 2023 on our picks. And
Maybe
so
we'll bring her back like right before training camp to see if Anthony Richardson will start like week 1 or not, something like that. And then we'll just go from there.
We got to get her an on-camera appearance right now. She's resistant at the moment, but we got to get her. People on YouTube, it's gonna be a lot better watching her than me. That's all I'm saying.
She's smart already. Her young age, already holding out and probably making insane contract requests to get appearances on the podcast.
She's gonna be one of those. She needs this brand of water and all the green room requests. So we'll see how that goes. But I'll tell you the biggest shock to me. We talked about it at the opener. If you had told me this morning that Will Levis would still be on the board tonight, I would.
And Hendon Hooker, your boy. It. I thought they both were going in the first round. We talked about it.
Yeah, a future Super Bowl MVP in Hendon Hooker. That one, at least the injury though, you know why he fell. Although
those doctors are saying week 1 he should be ready to go, which I kind of thought, okay, that could kind of convince teams get the extra year of control with the 5th-year option in the first round. But yeah, the Colts get their quarterback in Anthony Richardson. They also get the last quarterback of the first round.
Yeah, if you're the Titans, are you feeling pretty decent that both Levis and Hooker are still on the board? And maybe you got a shot at them here early tomorrow with what you've seen go on in the rest of the division?
If I'm the Colts, I'm feeling good about the Titans going back to the project well, especially if it's Will Levis. I'm feeling good about that. That's for sure.
It'll be interesting to see. I think the division got better today on the whole. I really like what Houston did, going back in and getting Will Anderson. I think that was a really smart move on their part. They had the draft capital. They gave up a first-round pick next year, but they still have one. So It's not like they, sold the farm. I thought they did a good job there. I thought Jacksonville made a nice pick there late for them. They needed to get some more protection up front with the situation they've got going with the suspension bearing down on them. I thought they did a good job. And, the Titans went and got an offensive lineman as well, and that's a huge need for them. So I think the division got better today. I think, there's hope the Colts got better today, and we'll see how it plays out the rest of this draft.
Now the ball is in Shane Steichen's court. Get Richardson developed, and let's get him on the track to being hopefully one day one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the NFL. So hopefully you are right now celebrating. If you are down or frustrated with the Richardson pick, again, the guy is a tools, and trust Shane Steichen to get the most out of him. That is at least the optimism I am clinging on to. So hopefully if you are a downer, more in George's camp, that you can kind of latch onto that and enjoy day 2 of the NFL draft. It will be a fun one here with the Colts pick on 35. So enjoy the Blue Horseshoe Pod. We will be back on Sunday morning, kind of recap the entire Colts draft. So we'll still circle back on some thoughts on Anthony Richardson. We'll see what the Colts do on days 2 and 3, kind of overall give you the state of the union of the Colts draft and our reactions as well. So Sunday morning, make sure to check that out. Of course, wherever you do get your pods, Blue Horseshoe Podcast, and on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod as well. So have a great weekend. Enjoy the other 6 rounds of the draft, and we'll talk to you on Sunday morning right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.